Imagine you are a lioness who just had cubs, looking for a perfect environment to raise them. The habitat in which you are surviving now is not big enough, and there is a lot of competition with other lions. So you move to a different area which seems perfect at first. But in reality, there are not enough resources to raise the cubs, and hyenas are desperately looking for a midnight snack. What happens next is tragic, but is not unusual in nature. How could you have known? You're just a lioness, wanting to raise her cubs in peace. Some cubs can escape the hungry hyenas, and the lioness might also survive, but the conditions in this area are not ideal. This is one example of how a sink population is formed. What exactly are sinks and sources in population ecology? Here you can see a population that lives in a high-quality habitat. There are enough resources, the climate is ideal, and predation is low. Because there are more births than deaths, the population is growing. This is a source population. Eventually, the source population will keep growing, leading to individuals migrating to nearby areas. These areas might not have the same ideal conditions as the source. Because of this, there are more deaths than births. This is called a sink population. Normally, separated sink populations go extinct. But as long as the connections between sink and source populations are functional, individuals will keep migrating from the source, maintaining the sink populations. This way, a whole network of connected source and sink populations is formed, called a metapopulation. Climate change can change sources to sinks and vice versa. How does this work? Climate change directly affects habitat quality. It might get warmer and wetter, or drier. Food availability and interactions can change. Source populations that thrived before start declining because of climate change. The other way around is also possible, where sink populations start growing. Let's see how changes in source-sink dynamics can happen in real life. Imagine you are a grizzly mama bear with her cubs living in Wyoming. You live in an area with a lot of white bark pine trees. The seeds of this tree are an important food source for your young cubs. Other grizzly bears in this area are also successfully reproducing a source population. But then the climate warms and bark beetles, which feed on white bark pines, are rapidly increasing. This results in widespread tree mortality, so less food resources for your bear cubs. The bear population could change from a source to a sink. Luckily, climate change can also change sinks to sources. Let's imagine you're a moose in Alaska. You currently live in a sink population. There are not many shrubs and grasses growing here. More southwards is a source population, where tall shrubs are abundant. Soon the climate warms and shrubs start popping up everywhere. Obviously, you move more towards the south, where you can feast on the shrubs and your population starts growing. All the surrounding sink populations could now change to source populations. More sources and fewer sinks result in an increase of the overall population. Why is it important to know how climate change impacts source-sink dynamics? Climate change could make populations with source-sink dynamics more vulnerable. More or more severe sinks can accelerate population decline and increase extinction risk. If we recognize where sinks emerge with climate change, we can take conservation measures. On the other hand, sinks could also act as a refuge. When a catastrophic event hits the source population, individuals may migrate from the surrounding sinks to the source, restoring the metapopulation. We also saw that climate change can create sources. These new sources offer opportunities for populations to persist under climate change. Protecting source populations is key to mitigating the effects of climate change. So, to summarize, climate change can change source populations to sink populations and vice versa. Changes in source-sink dynamics can create challenges or opportunities for populations. Recognizing sources and sinks helps us in where to prioritize conservation measures. We want to leave you with a few questions to think about. With climate change, would you prioritize the protection of sources or sinks? Do you think it is desirable to remove sink populations in terms of conservation? And for what species would you expect that climate change might create new sources?